Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us here on Actually Caucasian. Today we have an interview with the beautiful Diana Ishaqat. I am beside myself with excitement to be able to talk to her today. We're going to get to know her. We're going to figure out what goes on in that beautiful artistic mind of hers. If you've seen her art, you know exactly what I'm talking about. She focuses on the figures and lore of Circassians, and because she's from Jordan, she also focuses on like other ethnic groups that live within Jordan, and she finds a way to show them harmoniously in her work, and it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. Anybody who has her work hanging in their house, I mean, what a gift. So I believe I did see her sign in. I think we should just get straight to it, and that way you guys we can just get to it. I hope everybody's doing well. Before I start, I should say, in case internet connection gets cut, we're just going to hop right back on and finish our conversation. You know, I always say that it is just kind of like a small miracle that we're able to do this in general. So any kind of hiccups and glitches that we experience, they're fine. We'll just kind of keep rolling. We'll fix it and keep rolling. So let me go ahead. Oh, there she is. Diana! Come on. Connect.
Hello, good evening.
Hey, hi. Good
Hi.
morning from Texas.
Thank
Good
you very
evening
much.
from Jordan.
Good evening from Jordan. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you so much for your
Oh.
initiative.
Oh, thank you for coming on. You know, spending some of your weekend evening with me. I appreciate it so much. I could talk all day about how I am like a huge fan of yours. Your art is so beautiful, so
Thank you.
inspiring. So I literally can't wait to hear what's in that head. I mean, I'm so excited.
I'm
um,
the same. I'm very happy to be here and to be a part of your initiative. I
Thank you.
think you're one of the most vivid and active voices in the digital space on issues that we both
Oh.
care about. So
Oh,
thank you so
thank
much.
you. I appreciate it. Honestly, it's when it comes to culture, it literally is from inside. And I don't know, it's just whatever's inside is just coming out. It's its own thing. So um let's get right to it, Deanna. If you could please just tell us about yourself. What has forged you, what has created you into the lovely person that you are today, sharing such beauty with us, artistically, you know, your expressions, just place us in the world of Deanna. We're all ears.
Thank you very much. So I'm having this conversation with you from Amman. I grew up here, but I've also lived between the North Caucasus and Jordan growing up. The situation has changed later on because of the regional situation overall, but a large part of my upbringing took place in the mother homeland.
Wow.
And my interest in the arts came, I think, to a large extent because it was encouraged at home from the very beginnings, and I had the liberty to create, experiment with different materials, and so this was something that was always encouraged. For the longest time, I did not want to publish my work. I felt like I think many people find themselves in a similar position, not very ready to show what they create in their own time with others. And then I began to understand that if I do that, then I kind of rob myself of the opportunity of being defined with something beyond the 9 to 5 definition of who I am.
Right.
And I started my page in late February. And since then, it's been a very exciting journey,
Oh.
especially in discovering how we're all linked in different ways. And I was expecting that in the very start, it would just be me, maybe publishing some things that would encourage me to create actively. And then at some point, something could come out of it. But I think it accelerated a lot faster than I was expecting.
That's incredible. We're so and we're all happy for you. I mean,
Thank you.
it's just I'm serious. Like when I remember finding your page, and it was the video of you had a couple videos of like colors, in different Circassian or Caucasian artwork, and then you showed a video of like our work and like where you could find Circassians in art galleries, and I was like, this is it. I love this. I love this. So, and you have just continued to just wow us, basically post after post. I mean, I'm so glad you decided to share your talent with us.
I recognized your work mostly from what you were publishing about historical trauma. And I found that very important because it's also an important concept for me. And I think we have probably a similar approach to it. So I think it's also one of the links to what you do.
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, for this page, I try to talk about as much as possible just to kind of like bring that awareness, but that's incredible. And so where in the Caucasus did you grow up? What region?
Mhm. So the maternal side of my family comes from Dagestan, the east of the North Caucasus. And I grew up in a very diverse neighborhood in Jordan. It was particularly very mixed and a very unique mosaic in the early 2000s. Now it's more industrial and more urbanized compared to before. And I think it's the case with many places in Jordan and maybe in the global south. But those links were very important to me. We were one of the many groups of Circassians who would travel to the homeland through Syria and then through Turkey, and then we would get to our destination. So this would involve a lot of buses, usually in between. And I think that this route is probably no longer possible, at least for people coming from Jordan.
Right, right. Yeah, the events of that region have definitely shaped experiences, for better, for worse.
Mhm.
Um, okay, and I sent her, guys, so many, like, I was up last night and I'm just like, all the things I want to know about you. So I'm just looking at my notes here. Okay, so you as an artist, like, who are your inspirations artistically? Who do you
Mhm.
look to?
Mm-hmm. I think that I enjoy some of the classical works, but more and more I find myself whenever I'm traveling that I am into modern art
Okay.
and into also other artists who are researching identity. So the works of many artists who are Native American, for example, are very interesting to me and who are also activists. And it was not something that was shaped right away, but the interest in the aesthetics of our culture was always present. I think it was always interesting for me whenever we would have groups of people who would come for Hajj and cross through Jordan, back when it was still not very openly legal or acceptable to do those religious rituals from the Caucasus to Saudi Arabia's territory. And they would stay in Jordan for a while, usually bring some of the products from the Caucasus. And I would be just so attached to the fabrics, to the small figures they would bring. Something about it would speak to me. At the same time, the art scene is being developed in Jordan, a little bit maybe slower than we would like to see, especially for people who don't come from relatively elitist backgrounds or have a long history in the art scene. But I would say that the works of Van Gogh may be very classic and now something very popular among many people have inspired me because I liked his journey, which linked the human psyche to what you create, and I think helped us understand those different links between how you feel on the outside, on the inside, and how this reflects on the outside.
Wow, 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 wow. So when you were talking about activism and art, so I'm not an artist, okay? I'm like, I want to be one. Like I've always wanted to be one. So I ended up going interior design, and that's as close as I could get. But
Amazing.
I do love art. And the artists that make the biggest impact, in my personal, very humble opinion, are the ones that are creating for something, you
Uh-huh.
know, for just something. And I have come across it so much that art is political, you know. There is always, I mean, it's such a deeply embedded sort of a practice and discipline that it has to come from somewhere. um,
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
even Van Gogh, you know, even ones that you just think, oh, this is just a bunch of picture, I mean, flowers or whatever. I mean, typically an artist will have deep emotional, you know, drives and
Mhm.
reasonings for why they paint certain things. And I am here for it. Oh my God. I mean, just to connect those two things, just beautiful.
I
It's
think
just such
it's very important, like you are saying, because in the context where I grew up, in the national Jordanian curriculums that we study, at least a part of the national system, minorities are mentioned exactly twice in 16 years of education,
oh wow.
with no further context, no further knowledge or explanation. And this makes it difficult to have a common platform to start the conversation from. And as I shared, with increased urbanization, as well as the conflicts nearby and the difficulties of living in Jordan, especially as it becomes a place where it's harder to find upward social mobility opportunities, people have less and less conversations about this, as well as about many other issues, because it becomes a race for the basics. And with time, I really believe that this affects, that the lack of representation affects our self-esteem, the way we participate in society, as well as the way we look to ourselves, and just communicate this identity. And so I think that from there, although we think that these are simple things, we're just sharing what we are used to, but it's a really unique world perspective. And that for many people it is also somewhat a problem, and this is not just in Jordan, it's really anywhere, because we live in the age in which if you have a passport that says your nationality's title on it, then you are real, so to say. And
Right.
if you don't, then maybe it's a subculture or some relatively, let's say, something you're hanging into but isn't so tangible in the real world. So I think more evidence that people could touch, work with, and own, and also transform in their own ways, it helps some internal works that they might be working on as well.
Absolutely. I mean, oh my God, you said that so beautifully. So that is such a huge part of American minority culture as well. It seems like the same thing is sort of happening maybe everywhere.
Yeah.
And it bothers majority culture. So sometimes, you know, it because it stirs the pot a little bit. But you know,
Mhm.
identity and knowing who you are and feeling represented in some way is so important. And you see
Mhm.
it just across all boards, from clothing, books, children's material, and art, you know, which is just
Mhm.
amazing. And I think a consistent thing that I try to say on this page, and it seems like you're just saying that, you're echoing it, is if you have any talent, and whatever your gifts are, give that gift to the world, and please include us. Include your
Mhm.
people, right? So you're not going to lose anything. If anything, you're just going to gain the love of your people and people who are interested
It's
in your
totally
people.
right. And you will also, I think, discover along the way how emotional it is to be close to those subjects, because there are many questions that you might have, areas in which you don't feel very confident about the knowledge of who you are. And especially with the disappearance of the language. Increasingly, even in the homeland, it is causing those gaps that are very difficult to fill, since we don't have the same political or economic structures as other communities have, in terms of access to funding such causes or making any change to the reality, especially when it comes to the language. And I think that it's very important to remember that we also live in areas that are always prone to conflict, and that having transferable skills, however sad the reasons are, is very important because we never know what's next for us. And because even if you remain in the same place, the economic hardships are always present because of the wars next door. And so being able to do what is actually indigenous knowledge, knowing how to work with different materials and having certain entrepreneurial mindsets, I think it can help us through hardships, whether it's a personal or a collective one.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I wish I could take what you said and frame it. It's just, it's so just perfect. How could anybody hear that and not just want to like jump right into it? I mean, so just having said that, so you speak three languages. Do you have any more languages in your pocket, or is it just the Arabic,
So
Circassian?
I grew up in a very multilingual environment. I speak Arabic, English, Russian, and I understand Circassian. I can read and write.
Wow.
It's a little bit rusty because I have very few people to practice with.
Oh, yeah.
But this is again my own responsibility to make this different.
Right.
But those are the languages I grew up around. And maybe it would be surprising, but in the areas where we are, here, especially as Circassians, Chechens, or Armenians, it's also it attracts other forms of diversity. It has always done so. So in the past, these languages were more recognizable. They were easier to understand among the locals. Now it's a little bit different, but I think, always grateful because there are so many great resources that I can access about who we are as well as how other people see us thanks to those languages.
Oh, incredible. So incredible. My last guest basically said the same thing because once you start studying Circassians and their diaspora and the communities that they live in and the countries that they live, you end up studying the world.
Yes, exactly.
Right? So we're all connected, and just to think that you live in a bubble or try to put yourself in a bubble, you do yourself such a huge disservice. And with that, I want to mention your art because a huge part of your art is bridging the different cultures that you have, touched your life because of where you are geographically. I think especially you don't just paint Circassians, right? You've painted Armenians, you've painted Bedouins. Please tell us about that. I mean, your process, the symbolism, just what it means to you, everything.
Um, I think um, I think that it's often easy to see ourselves as people who lived in some areas that are remote, difficult to access, and there is this narrative, and there are common myths, the same things as people could not read and write in the past. It's a myth. People had written languages. They evolved over time. They've tried different forms of letters to be able to communicate with others. They had active trade lines. They lived by the sea largely as well, and they had active connections with large kingdoms as well as smaller communities in the past. And this is not different nowadays because even in Circassian majority neighborhoods, there are other people who live with us. And it's important not to think of ourselves as a small group with this smaller brother syndrome that we often have. I don't
Right.
know if this term is used in the diaspora, but it's often used in the homeland. And I also like to think that we have contributed to the establishment of many states in the Arab world as well as nearby. And it's important to highlight that this has been present, that a part of the native fabric of those countries are the Circassians, and that our heritage is not a subculture. It is also a part of what should be more mainstream, more recognizable, and rather than something that is something that if you happen to know about it, then you know, but if you haven't lived around, then you wouldn't know.
Wow. Wow. So having that confidence to just really believe that,
Mm-hmm.
we're worth knowing about, and B, that we have a legitimate
Mm-hmm.
claim, in the conversation of basically society.
Yes.
Amazing. Beautiful. Have you ever done painting? I mean, I'm sure you have, so it's not just have you. It's like, what else have you painted on? What other subject matters kind of capture your heart? I know right now you're focusing on this. Like, will we see something maybe in the future, you know, of something else that affects you or that you enjoy to create?
I think that I really enjoy the topic of women in society. Outside maybe the conversation on art, I work in the field of development, and I'm also an activist on women's rights in Jordan. Throughout this year, we have had several waves of severe violence against women, crimes of honor that really took everyone with shock. People often say, why do you take this so close to your heart? Why are women so angry about this? But they don't understand is that it's not important who this woman is. We're all in the same situation, so we feel her, and it feels like a very personal pain. And also being a woman who's from a minority community also makes you vulnerable in a certain way. Of course, the society protects us in many ways, and I would say that our society can be a safer space than many other places, especially in the region where we live. But at the same time, we are more easily recognized by the last names we have, by how we look, by other things. And it can be an invitation for people sometimes to ask questions that we are not very comfortable with. And that's why I think that the conversation on womanhood is directly linked to who we ethnically and culturally are, especially with the painful history that the Circassian women have had over the different centuries that we might be familiar with. So I think that I often like to paint women in power positions, in leadership approaches, because I have had enough of beauties being captured through the male gaze.
Oh my
And
God.
I think everyone else, you know, sometimes I want to create jewelry or other things, and these are my own.
Oh no. So, oh, beautiful. I thank you so much. I mean, I can relate. In my way, I can relate. I mean, one of the reasons I made this page was because I saw a post about Circassian beauties, and it was the last post about Circassian beauties I was gonna see. So her, I don't know who's glitching, me or her, but this is paused. I can't see you, Deanna. So this is a good example of the internet pooping out. Okay, come back. I'm just gonna give her a second. Get the wheel. Oh, I think okay, she's coming back. Okay, there we go.
Okay, I think I am back.
All right, good. I mean, it cut off a little bit, but I was basically just saying how I completely, I can very, very much understand where you're coming from with the representation, with the historical trauma that Circassian / Caucasian women have suffered, you know, through, like you were saying, different empires, different centuries. That in and of itself deserves a full just sit down and just process. And we've been trying to process for, like you said, generations. So you're turning it into gold, Deanna, with your work, and I feel it, you know. I mean, until now, I didn't have the words from you, but you can feel it in your art, and it's so precious. So thank you. So in your art, looking at my notes, you do love to include these themes of like poppies, bees, the Sinai rose finch, beautiful Jordanian native bird, astronomy, like constellations. I mean, how are you pulling culture and these elements together?
I think I like to, maybe it's a part of some internal works that are happening inside the mind. in an attempt to feel less alienated with reality and more grounded in where we live. Jordan is also a very culturally and environmentally, it's very interesting for me to explore our surroundings in different ways, and also to make it something within a frame, within things that people can relate to. And there are also maybe aesthetic elements to these choices. But I really like the sense of being able to study the diversity beyond the human and cultural one. Because I think producing any piece takes some reading about it. So, for example, I did not know that Jordan had a native a bird that symbolized the country, although I tend to find myself reading a lot about it. And I think that it was, or it is, not common knowledge among at least many people that I know. So it took, I think it took making some pieces to realize all of those things, and it's a learning process along the way.
Wow, beautiful. What's your favorite medium to work with? Because you've shown us a few, so on your page. So like, what do you as an artist enjoy creating with?
I really like to use watercolors. They are not everyone's favorite because they are relatively see-through, but for me, I think that they require the strongest relationship with the subjects or the objects that you are painting, because they allow no room for making mistakes. Unlike it is with oils and with acrylics, you can always relatively cover something up, unless it's completely a tragedy, but otherwise it should be working. But in the case of watercolors as well as coffee, which I use in the painting of my work, it requires a really close relationship, knowledge, and comfort shared with whatever it is that you are trying to convey. And any move and thinking process can really be visible on the paper or the canvas that you're trying to fill.
Beautiful. I mean, again, I love watercolor. It just, I'm telling you, when I say that, it just, the whole package is just so breathtaking. Thank you so much. Okay, let's do something a little different. So in a recent post, you captioned, and I'm going to read it, making art is like putting a pencil in the eye of extremists, warlords, and xenophobes who cause us to live in places threatened by conflicts and war. Make art, create bridges to new people and worlds, and may the best stories and adventures come our way. It's I read that and I was just like, that sounds like the beginning of a book. That sounds like something that, you know, a speech, a talk. It sounds like the tip of a very big and deep concept that maybe that's something that you wanted to share a little bit more on, especially right now with the news coming out of the Caucasus about mobilization and you know, all of the conflicting I mean, it's a little bit of a back and forth, you know, between, I think, the people, but overall it's generally war is not a happy experience, no matter how you want to frame it.
Definitely. It saddens me a lot that more and more people are being forcibly drawn into this situation, especially the young people, and especially people who come from less economically privileged backgrounds, as well as people who are already minorities and indigenous people. I think it's the number one subject on everyone's mind right now, no matter where we live. And it's very difficult to create a balance between reading the news and still remaining sane in many ways. I do my best to stay in touch with people I care about. Unfortunately, many either cannot send information about what is happening right now, whereas others just text really briefly to explain where they are. And it's not their fault. Safety comes first. I wish that things were different, but they are the way they are. For me, the writing came after an experience in which I think no matter how much you would think of yourself as someone who has at least a sufficient amount of literacy to work with people who have issues with differences, you will still come across people who really look like they look harmless, but they mean harm with their words. And I think that with the issues of racism, a lot of it can be really intangible. They can be really subject to personal interpretation, as well as the level of awareness and literacy that people have. So it can be easily become something that sounds like gaslighting. You are making a big deal out of it. You are sensitive. You have anger issues. You are holding on to something from the past. It's time to let go. And I had an experience in which a person from the perspective of power structures was in a position in which this person had more power than I did. And she would repeatedly tell me that it's time to create things that people will actually buy. And it was very like uncalled for. And then I said, you do realize that there is an audience for people who are different in Jordan. And she's like, really? So there are people who are like that. And this is a person in a very senior position who actually works with the issues of diversity. And it showed me that it had taught me a lot because we had to work side to side for some time.
Right.
And it had shown me that even your art, something you practice in your own free time, can be really challenging to many minds that are not okay with seeing so. And that this is, we assume that as people who are anti-racist, who are against those divisive comments and against the demonization of people, especially that the people are different from their governments, from the decision makers in their countries. And it has not been easy to say that this is what I like to do. People like to own those pieces, and they come from different countries because my work is regularly shipped to other places as well. And then the lack of literacy of even how to talk to a person who is different, and investing the basic effort into researching such thematic areas. It explains things. They are not used to seeing anything that talks about Jordan, and isn't always it isn't always only Arab, because the very essence of a country like Jordan is that you can be Jordanian and non-Arab. It has been like that. It started as its very pillar, and this is how the place started, and this is how it became a host to all those people fleeing conflict with literally nowhere else to go.
Right.
So I think that experiences like that throughout this year in which I've been publishing those works, they made me understand that for me, it's just something that I make in my own time. But then for someone else, it's a direct challenge to who they are. It's like a message, like this is a place that you are not familiar with. And therefore, there is this sense of maybe questioning or feeling attacked. And also their need to sometimes finding that people who are different need to be conformists. They need to say, yes, I agree with you. They need to be diplomatic. They need to be nice. And if you aren't nice in your explanation, then this person is a bad representative of everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Incredible. Incredible. I mean, I'm the entire subject is, it's so, I think most I want to say all, okay, like minorities at some point in their life experience that in some way. The aggression, right? It's a microaggression. Sometimes it's big. Sometimes you will literally get attacked because you stand out. And like in America, where I think, Circassian people, Caucasian people in general, we can blend in a little bit better for safety. We've grown up using that safety to blend in so that we don't get the questions, basically, unless we're in a position where we are opening and we're trying to like bring that attention inward, maybe in educational spaces as I have in my life. But the fact that you're creating this this vibe, right, with your art, your captions, you're giving so much more information about, that drive from inside, and it's so necessary, even among our people, because I think a lot of the expressions also, and I'm not knocking it, okay? I think there's room for everything. In my opinion, there's room for everything. There's room for really, really super ultra traditional sort of stuff. And then there's room for like something that wants to breathe a little bit more outward. I
Mm-hmm.
believe in all of it. And we need all of it, right? So, um, you know,
It's
a lot
very
of,
true. It's very true. I think that, as you were saying, in terms of opening up, I think that the acceptable ways of opening up is performing arts. Everyone seems to like them
right,
because they consider them, they are non-problematic for the
right,
public that we live among. But I often talk to people, and I tell them that this is a beautiful, important aspect of who we are, and performing arts for the lack of focus on language or anything else. Those are separate matters for me. We live in places where performing arts, especially performed by women, are not something that is normal or normal or acceptable, so we
right,
tend to forget how radical what we are doing is. At the same time, most people tell me, if you have pieces in which Circassians are dancing or playing music, then this is what I'm looking for. And I often say that there are a lot of pieces like that in other people's work. Again, all of this is very important, but I would rather do maybe different things because I would like us being seen beyond the realm of those relatively easy to digest types of who we are.
right, right. Beautiful. So guys, if you're watching, don't be afraid to go out of the box a little bit. Don't. I mean, there are minds out there. Not only do we need to see it, okay, like young people, older people, just to stretch that brain a little bit. You know, you're adding to the fabric of the conversation of what it is actually like to be living in this modern world that we're in, where we are in bumping constantly with this modernity and diversity, and we're a very cool part of that story. Very cool. I mean, I haven't met anybody that hears about our people and goes, oh, okay, heard that before. Like nobody ever has like a so-so reaction, so your work does such a beautiful job of illustrating that. And I loved that caption. I felt like, oh, there's so much there. So thank you for explaining that to me. Um, okay, another juicy question. So if there was one thing about your people that you would want the whole world to know, Diana, what would that be? Like if you could just share it with everybody right now.
I think that what I would want is something that is linked to what you always talk about, is that it's important to that when indigenous people talk about their conception of time and place, it's different to what maybe other nations envision. So as when in the global north people can talk about themselves in the sense of their own lifetime as well as potentially that of their parents, it's very normal for indigenous people as well as those historically displaced to talk about things that are history to others.
Right.
And why that is because you cannot separate who we are from what has happened in the past. And that a part of, nothing has ever healed by saying you are overreacting. It's time to forget,
Right.
and it's time to move on. So I think that sometimes it's very simple. Just listening makes a lot of difference, and just understanding that the differences are not just in how we look or how we behave or how we talk. They are also in the way that we see the world. And the concepts of time and place are probably the two things which are the most, I think, the most different in this conversation.
Wow. Beautiful. So did you hear that, world? Pay attention. Okay. Do you have any hopes for the future of the community that you're a part of, or the Caucasus in general? I think you probably have a beautiful.
For back home, I just wish for peace. I live in a context where not a lot can be said about the situation where I stand from. Surveillance, digital rights are not a big thing here. And there are many issues with our ability to express how we really feel. And I think that this extends to some parts of Europe as well. But I really dream of a day in which armed conflicts and the pain that the different power structures existing back home would not be such a lived everyday reality for so many people, and that access would be more open to where we are from. And it's very difficult to follow the news being a person who has family, relatives, as well as loved ones back home, and they are not easy for anyone, and especially with all those constraints and us being able to talk about it as well. But many people can think that a wish for peace can sound like it's something ridiculous, like it's something superficial, but it's the greatest luxury of our time. And it's the highest thing anyone could wish for. I live in Jordan. It's surrounded by fire from every side that we could think of. Countries are either waging war at others or are at war themselves. So for me, peace is really everything, and it begins at home in our minds and how we see ourselves and others. For my own community and maybe those who are abroad, I hope that people who create things can become better connected, and that we can learn from one another, and that we are also assertive about what we make and how we do it. And I hope to see more of an entrepreneurial and a business aspect to what we do, because I think it's a good time to give this a try or experiment with what is it like to own heritage in new ways and how to be a contributor and an active maker of those crafts.
Wow. Wow. If you didn't just say it all, oh my goodness. Ah, I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This theme of entrepreneurism is so interesting to me. And I really hope, I really hope, because when I was growing up, my dad, who's from Golan Heights, he was from Qanetra, and my
Mm-hmm.
mom is from Mansoura, so they were part of the whole, like, the whole thing. They had to go to Damascus, and they worked and worked, and the way that they worked was like survival,
Yeah.
always.
Mm-hmm.
And they basically sacrificed their life to give like me and my sisters, and like basically like speaking in a generational way, the opportunity to kind of think a little bit outside of that box of working just to survive. And I'm always just running these ideas in my head, and the thing that stops me constantly is myself. If I was to stop myself, I feel like I'm in a place where I can grow now, and maybe having a couple kids, maybe there's just a little bit of I don't really care what other people think right now. But I think for a lot of people, especially youth, maybe there's a worry, of how they're going to come across, how are people going to remember them. And guys, if there's one thing I want to say is just do it. Just do it. If you have an idea, just do it. Put it on the internet. Just put it out there, and you'll be surprised. If it doesn't work, so what? It didn't work. Close it up, try something, go back to your workshop. But you could change your life, by just
Mm-hmm.
going with an idea that you feel passionately about. And Deanna, you said it in the beginning, we are more than our 9 to 5s. We
Yes,
are,
definitely, definitely.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Um, do you have, so I'm going to just keep going with the questions. Do you have a memory of being engaged in a cultural setting that you remember feeling so deeply happy in that
Mm-hmm.
moment?
I am just going to take the charger from here. Sorry.
No, no,
Let me
you're
just
okay.
take. But
My
as
phone, I
I
forgot to plug it in too, so I'm like staring at it like, what's gonna happen?
I am, I think that recently throughout this year, we have been having many activities for the community. And more and more art is present. Have those questions to us. Let me see if this is stuck. Okay, I think it's working.
Yeah.
I think that we are having more and more art galleries in Amman by Circassian artists, especially younger ones, mostly through our association here. And I think that this is, it's really interesting that particularly in occasions in which art was not present in the past, now it is present. So I was a part of organizing the May 21st gallery this year, and it was something that we've done for the first time, because typically the arts are not thought of as a proper medium to commemorate a day like this. So it was very nice to see a newer reaction, that especially as a people who have a hard time talking about feelings, that we get to see them translated into new mediums instead. And I think that art is a daring but also a safe medium to start those conversations, especially, again, as I said, as a people who have a hard time talking about feelings and tend to only accept anger or pride in many times as emotions and as valid feelings. So I think that this would be it for me. The few galleries that we've held throughout the year here at local organizations, together with other young people as well as more established artists, and it really allowed us to also have this intergenerational dialogue in which we see what is the difference in the type of things that we like to create based on the waves and the ages of the people as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. I mean, in that way, it's not just about you, it's about the community, it's about helping people process, you know, our most tragic sort of cumulative like event, you know, we all of us, like who are, you know, involved in cultural work, we can all say that we know that feeling, the sadness when you sit and you contemplate what happens. So in that way, truly, that is such a true like cultural setting. It the ripples of it probably, you know, backwards and forwards and sideways, like it just beautiful in the way that that probably brought healing to some people on that day. Beautiful. And then you said about how we're people that generally have a hard time expressing our feelings. What are you talking about? We're so expressive.
Yeah, I think that many people could relate to.
Yeah, it's just you know, that's a big theme for us, I think, across the board. Definitely related to our trauma. And then I think I have one more question. I believe there's one more, and since we went there, I'm gonna ask you, and then we'll just kind of wrap it up, just let you get on with your evening. But the question is, are there any areas of your life experience so far that you feel you've broken generational trauma?
I think that I do that through writing. I intend to publish more of that. But it has been a process, because in the past, even writing about what I experienced and who we are would make me constantly like go back and rewrite things, and then just feel it's not a good representation. This is not proper. But more and more it is changing. This month I'm presenting a paper about the Circassian community's internal structure in Jordan and the communal governance of the people here. And I think that more and more the use of research helps me to be both a person from the inside as well as relatively the outside, because the very first academic project I had, which was my dissertation, and it was about how we use digital platforms to advocate for indigenous rights, with the case study
Wow.
being the Circassians of Jordan. It was like really stripping some of your skin off your body, because it was just very, very difficult. People may not understand this until they actually have to try this. And then with time, it gets more and more easier. But in the past, even sometimes listening to some facts, some names, it would just bring all those goosebumps. They would be so difficult to deal with. You'd need some time off the computer and then come back to it depending on the subject. So I think that being in research, in addition to my art, helps me process things, because also very few people could understand them, and very few people also think about them as such. But I look around, and it's like there are just so many aspects of who we are that are still a processing of what happened in the past,
Right.
including things that maybe people don't think of as such. But everyone owns 4x4 cars. Everyone has those hunting dogs or hunting like breeds. Everyone enjoys time in nature within certain rituals that maybe other people don't. But here, for example, young men and women, they sit around fire and they play music, and then they connect to nature in ways and maybe other people don't. And many, many other rituals like that. And a friend of mine lives in Eastern Europe, and at some point I was visiting this friend, and he was playing this playlist for us, the group that came, and he was getting ready to go out. And then I said, is this your like not rituals that you are
Oh,
practicing? And
right.
then he's like, but don't you do that too? Don't you do the same? And he's like, if I don't do that, I feel like I'm losing connection with some parts of who I am. And then
Wow.
I began to think about it as such, is that people really make sure that something from what they really are remains in their everyday. And it's a very, very strong connection. I was in conversation with a person who identifies as a nationalist from what could be considered the right wing here. And
Mm.
at some point, I asked him, like, what do you think about where the minorities stand, especially with the strong attachment that the Circassians, Chechens, and Armenians and other minorities within those minorities have. And he often says, like I heard many, many times before, even from people who are really close-minded, they would say, if all those world powers have tried to strip you of your identity and they could not succeed, what's the point in even trying? Khalas, we should just leave you where you stand, and we should just accept that you cannot change the people, you cannot make them forget where they are from. You can make them live with you and they can be a part of who you are, but they can never be anything that they are not.
Wow. Wow. Oh, that gave me goosebumps. That gives me goosebumps. Thank you for that. I'm sure if your line of ancestors could see you and hear you, they would be incredibly proud, not only of the work that you're doing for your community, but the way that you found to make to bring peace to yourself in regards to their pain.
Mhm.
I think that they would be incredibly proud and honored to have you, just the life that you're living in regards to your culture and making it mean something to you in an authentic and real way.
Mhm.
And I personally cannot wait. I hope that your papers and your writings will be available to people like me across
Thank
the
you so
globe.
much.
I hope that there's somewhere we can read them. Jordan has, I've never been there, but I grew up in New Jersey with a lot of Jordanian Circassian families, and there is just so much pride among the Jordanian Circassian, like Caucasian, I would say, community. And we can learn so much from each other. And today I learned so much. So, Deanna, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Guys, I've been trying to talk to Deanna since summer. Okay? I I've been trying to talk to her for months, so I'm just so happy that I was able to do it. Everything happens in its time. So today was just the perfect day to talk. I hope you feel
Thank
that way
you so
too.
much. I really appreciate being able to be a part of your project. As I really shared, it's a great way to connect, to have meaningful conversations, and they are a part of healing as well. And I hope to meet you in person and maybe talk more about your own motivations behind the work that you do. And thank you so much for this call. It's been amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you again. I hope we get to meet too. I have a few connections in Jordan. I
Inshallah.
mean, everything in its time. I hope one day I get to just make a trip over there and you know, really solidify these connections. So again, Diana, I hope you have a beautiful day. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. It was a very active fall, you know, situation down in the followings in the comments. So I appreciate every single person that tunes in live or watches later. Please share this amazing conversation with, you know, people that you talk about these things with. Deanna is a remarkable person. Support her art. Buy some prints, hang them up in your house. It's only going to make your house look better. That's coming from an interior designer, okay? Okay, Deanna, well, thank you. We'll keep in touch. I appreciate it. And yeah, we'll have, my eyeballs are on your page constantly. So
A big thank you and have a great day. Inshallah, we
thank
are
you.
in touch and
Inshallah.
hopefully see you very soon.
Thank you so much. Inshallah. Yalla. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.